Hello, Internet. Hello, Internet. I'm Jackie Fox, and wow, it looks like I'm being recognized as a pillar of the community in Word Visions. Also, it looks like I need to check my DMs a lot more often than I currently do. But I have been making wotv content for some time now. I've done several series that I think are really helpful for a lot of new players. I won't plug those right up front here before we talk about how we came to this point. But if you haven't seen it, I have video series making sense of any some of the more complicated weapons, or a little bit more outdated but weapon type VC comparisons to the various like job types. There's also this series on getting to know each element that's a little bit older, so it doesn't include some of the newest characters. So if you don't see a character in that video, assume they're probably pretty good, because they're newer than it. What else? I've done a number of series for new players. I'll try to make those playlists more available, but I want to say, as this feels like a bit of an award, I wanted to show my face and talk about how did we get here? You might find yourself wondering, how did we get here? Probably shouldn't mess with that very much while I'm recording, but hello everyone. I want to first say, like, kind of in mobile gaming I started, there's a lot of things I could say about some of the games I started with. I don't really want to name names in particular on what those games were, because I didn't play a lot of them for very long. I don't remember them super fondly in some respects, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for them. One of the only like mobile games that I really enjoyed, and it was for so many things outside of the game, like community, was Pokemon Go, right when it first started, because if you wanted a friend group to hang out with, you could just see who was playing Pokemon Go on your team locally, and they'd be happy to like... And then, hello. Hi. Kiddo. Hi. What do you want?
What you doing?
I'm making a video. What are you doing?
Talking while you're doing your video.
I see that. Anyways, where were we? How did we get here? A lot of those early games, though, especially the ones that were monetized in any way, the ones that were, I don't know, like American version of gotchas. It took us a little while to get into the normalization of microtransactions within gaming in America. But boy, it's almost like we don't have a framework of laws in this country that might exist in other countries such as Japan that regulate these sort of industries. Why they tend to run rampant in the way that they monetize or advertise or just mess with their customer base. And one of the first particularly Final Fantasy related titles that I remember playing was Record Keeper. Looking back at this, because I did do a little bit of research here, apparently Record Keeper was a gacha, but you unlocked characters as you progressed through story. So while it like is a gacha in that sense, in another sense, it's not like a game that you pull in the way that we think of a gacha. So very free to play friendly, and like I look at that game these days and I'm like, how is this monetized? How did this run until 2022? And why did I stop playing? And well, there's one very big and obvious answer for why I stopped playing Record Keeper. And there is maybe a smaller one, a couple smaller ones. Honestly, a couple smaller ones that are even more unsatisfied now than they were previously. So, dear wotv community people who watch this stuff, maybe this is a perspective worth listening to as a pillar. I don't know, but for one, I mean, the big reason is FFB. It was just in a lot of ways better. It had an original story for me to sink my teeth into. I mean, sure, it wasn't quite the writing of like a console game. It suffered from like mobile writing disorder or whatever you want to call that, like just just how I don't know, like look at Crisis Core versus even the original Final Fantasy VII. Mobile design kind of limits and it does weird things to story a lot of times, unfortunately. But for what it is, the FFB story is pretty deep. The lore is pretty extensive and is becoming interconnected more and more with War of the Visions, as we're seeing in Ashes of the Apocalypse. We're starting to see things taking place in FFB's modern farm, which is the country that Farm from our game founded. One of the reasons I think that I got more into FFB was that in some ways the graphics were kind of lacking from no, actually I can't say that for certain. I mean, it did feel, what I saw today did feel pretty pixely, but also I remember like being able, one of the things I remember most was being able, I had unlocked Edia, and I'd gotten like, I think it was Edia's hairpiece or something. It was really powerful. It was like a Trustmaster-ish thing. But I could equip it and I could see it on the characters I equipped it to, like in combat and stuff. So maybe the graphics weren't that bad. And personally, I'm a sucker for that. I missed those features in FFB, although the sprite work in FFB is really amazing. For pixel art, FFB is really good, and I think that coming to the creators of, what was it, Brave Frontier that they did before this? They really picked the right people to do the pixel art for FFB specifically. Hey Gumi, you're doing a pretty good job with War of the Visions as well, but like looking at your past repertoire, it made a lot of sense that you would do a game that was as cool pixel art heavy as FFB was, especially once you started getting into later eras where you had to go more all out on some of the designs. Because you were pretty tame with some of the original designs early on. You didn't make them look as flourishy and take up the space in the same way that some of your Brave Frontier did, but you moved into that space later on, and artistically I thought that was pretty cool. So art was a big reason. But I gotta say, one thing that I was looking maybe a little bit more for in Record Keeper, one thing I remember missing that did not improve in FFB and has actually kind of gotten worse in War of the Visions is, if I'm doing this from a nostalgia perspective, and I had higher expectations of this, I think, at a Record Keeper, because it was a game that was about being a Final Fantasy librarian and replaying old classic battles. And in one way, that's always going to be really disconnected and not have the same emotional impact as it would playing it in the context of the video game to begin with. But also, the story gets kind of condensed, dumbed down, and I don't know, it's a little bit more of a wink and a nod than is a fully elaborated thing. It's often not incredibly well written. Now, when FFBE did crossovers, it was more like your characters were wandering through the vibe of that video game and maybe a famous stage with a famous boss. There would be some general, like, reflection on the overall metaphor is that characters would be like vibing out of vibe space. It's a weird writing style. And writing seemingly entirely has been abandoned from, like, there's no story for collaboration events. Not a word written for collaboration events on War of the Visions. And I think it's kind of unfortunate. There was a little bit more story for the Addison Rae event, and maybe it's because pointing out that there's leaky dimensional portals happening all over Ardra is kind of weird. At a certain point, it felt like everything was connected to the Farplane in FFB. Farplane shenanigans were happening all the time. New Farplane shenanigans every week. And honestly, playing into Ever Crisis for a while, it's like, where is everybody getting Portal? At some point, they're going to have to tell me why every flavor of the week monster has access to Portal materia, which is previously unheard of within 7. Don't understand at all. So maybe they're just avoiding some of those complications entirely by only doing it with the outside of Final Fantasy collaborations, because we do see that with things like, we see them try with Full Metal Alchemist. Even Addison Rae had a story like this. So that's kind of how I came into this, but my first Gumi game actually wasn't FFB, it was the Alchemist Code, which kind of primed me for War of the Visions in that the games are very similar. I liked the combat style, but I wasn't necessarily grasping into the story. It didn't have the hooks of nostalgia to bring me in, which is kind of a recurring thing that's hit me during my life, I guess. But also, because I was unfamiliar to the space in general, and this kind of hits on why I eventually started a YouTube channel, I found I didn't get very far even into the main story before I got to a point where I needed maxed out companion units because I couldn't build my own. I couldn't make my own that good, you know what I mean? I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to play the game. I didn't understand all the places I had to go to farm to get the things, to do the thing, build up the thing so that I could do 5 more levels up, but I'm still 100 levels away from what I need that be to actually be able to relevantly clear the board. And it seemed like even having one powerful character, I could do a lot of stuff. And the really powerful character seemed exciting, but it was just like, how do I unlock this? And I didn't really have any support. I didn't really go for resources. It wasn't a part of a Alchemist Code Discord or anything. I didn't have any good place to go when I had questions. And as I was playing FFBE, I started to notice that there were YouTube content creators that would demystify those things and try to make it easier for people like me to keep up with what was going on, but also to understand and not feel like I was getting left behind. I noticed that. I just kept playing for a couple of years, right? I had my main channel that I've been working on for years, intermittently sometimes because, something about the content schedule I want that channel to have soul. So I can't just make something every week. It has to be when it needs to be made, I think. Anyways, I was making that channel still during that time, so I had plenty of experience with the YouTube space. So after becoming a guild leader and switching over to War of the Visions, leading my guild, it started to become apparent to me that there were parts of the game that just weren't being communicated regularly. There were just kind of fundamentals that people were missing out on. And I would often find that if one person in my guild didn't know a thing, 5 people in my guild didn't know a thing. So I found it easier to make tutorial videos for people in my guild to help them out. And after doing this for a couple of months, I realized, there's a broader community out here that could use tutorial videos or things that demystify this for newer players so that they have orientation and perspective and expectations. All these things get aligned properly on the way in so that you know what kind of a game you're playing and get into that. And sometimes in the day-to-day, I kind of forget that a new player could be dropping in on any of my videos as their first. But I also try to supplement that with having great new player content and having great new player playlists and a full new player experience playlist. So I guess I just wanted to show my face, say hello to all of my new subscribers and say thank you so much for your support. Hey Justin, I'm sorry I got back to you so late, man. It was nearly a month later. It's almost Christmas and I'm just now getting back to you. But thanks for being you. And I'll try to tune into your next live stream. I haven't been good at watching the live streams, and I know that's a big part of your work as a community manager. So thank you for paying attention to my work, and I'll check out your next video as well, I guess. To everyone else tuning in, thank you for watching. This has been a very special episode of Fox Talks Gaming, and I'll see you in the next one. In the meantime, subscribe, and check out the link in the description where you can, send money or any other things that you want. Help me fund my polls or etc. And no matter what you choose to do, I will see you in the next one.